For the last panel of the day, panel 3, we're talking with innovative partners, overcoming obstacles to partnership, driving adoption in senior living, and what's to come in innovation for the industry. This time I get to be the moderator, so if I could have the panelists come and join. We've got a couple of distinguished panelists here that are all innovating in senior living in really important ways. So why don't we go ahead and start with introductions. Amy, would you kick us off?
I will, yeah. Hi, Amy Kazak. I'm Executive Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for Curana Health. And at Curana Health, we have been called a pay-vider. And what that means is that we have about 700 plus clinicians, so think physicians, nurse practitioners, and a sprinkling of nurses, whose sole focus is to provide a comprehensive, high-quality, on-site primary care model for seniors living on senior living campuses. And that is all that they do. They don't have outside clinics or anything else. And then the payment part of it is very important because having a comprehensive model like that does not work in the fee-for-service setting today. You're not going to make it on fee-for-service margins. So we use our value-based care programs, and I know that that term is overused, but ours are really value-based care programs. We use our accountable care organizations and our Medicare Advantage special needs plans to fund that really comprehensive model. And again, all of those things are done through the lens of senior living. What differentiates us is that from the beginning, we have included senior living organizations, everything from skilled nursing facilities. I'm sorry, George, I talk with my hands, so be careful. Everything from skilled nursing facilities all the way through to affordable senior housing. You are a patient-centered medical home, literally. And we treat you like a care provider, whether you want to call yourself one or not. So our value-based care models fund our care, but they also fund some of your care when we share that back with you.
Thanks. I'm Jason Hazel. I'm a physical therapist and Chief Development Officer with Fox Rehabilitation. We are an outpatient therapy provider of physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech-language pathologists across the country that serve about 1,600 senior living communities, and we specialize in geriatric house calls. So about half of our business is serving senior living partners, some of whom are in the room today. And then we also see older adults in their traditional home setting under the outpatient benefit. We've been around for about 25 years, so innovative, but getting a little old in the grand scheme of things, I guess, but a model that people don't understand, even though it's been legal and something you could do for 25 years now, and in 28 states across the country.
Nice. I'm Erez Cohen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of August Health. We are a modern EHR and care platform built exclusively for senior living providers. We're really differentiated on ease of use, and we found that ease of use drives compliance, ease of use drives efficiency, ease of use drives staff satisfaction, ease of use drives family satisfaction, efficiency, kind of you name it. The existing platforms that are out there are difficult for the staff to use, and that leads to a whole host of problems. We're in about 300 communities. We're in 25 states now. We're the fastest growing EHR and built just for senior living.
Fantastic. So 3 really diverse but really important kind of solution providers in the space. So I think I want to start with a question of what do you see as the biggest challenge in senior living that you specifically solve? So when you're thinking about your company and like what makes your company so successful, there's got to be one, like what's the pain point for the customer? What are you solving and what makes you so good at it?
All right. Well, I think we bring better care into your communities, period. That is what we are designed to do. Our mission statement is that we improve the health, happiness, and dignity of senior living residents. The way we do that is by improving access to healthcare services, improving care coordination of healthcare services, and improving the overall patient experience. And we do all of that while also supporting the facilities that we partner with. So our value-based payments are very important, but again, what we solve for is an improved care model that leads to improved outcomes and improved experience.
A focus for us is really built around functional wellness, and so our medical model is one that the heavy focus, appropriately so, is on medical wellness. But aging in America and the both self-induced and societally induced ageism that we see is that you should functionally fail as you get older. And that's not a normal part of aging. So I think the problem we solve is we focus and have clinicians who are experts in looking at the functional wellness and capabilities of an older adult who often moves into a senior living setting far too late and is functionally failing at a very high level. And we try to help partners reverse that curve as quickly as we can to get people back to age and gender-related normative values from a functional perspective. And it's one that many people think once they lose, they can never regain. And in fact, with properly dosed interventions, you can. And we like to be a support system in that.
I'm going to answer with a story, which is really kind of my first visit to a senior living building, and I saw, sort of as a fly in the wall, a family moving into a new community, and so we asked, can we watch in the conference room? And so there was a family sitting on one side, an executive director and the sales director on the other side of the table, and then in between them were like 300 pieces of paper on a conference room. And, there was this state form, there was an admissions agreement, there was an addendum, there was this arbitration clause, another form for hearing aids. It was just this plethora of paperwork. And, the family was looking around, the ED was shuffling, hey, this is last year's admissions agreement. She was like whispering to get a new one. They're struggling to fill this out. And then, the family went on, they signed the paperwork. And then I asked the ED, what happens next? You've signed all this paperwork, what are you going to do? She's like, well, we put it in this binder. And then I said, well, why? What are you doing now with all the information on the paperwork? She said, largely, we never open that binder again. And then, continuing the tour, again, this is a true story of my first day in a community. And we walk into the staff nurse room. And I see, there's a computer sitting on the desk, but then actually there's a big whiteboard on the side of the wall with a grid and many, many Post-it notes. And then it has a shower schedule on it. There's 3 new admits on the wall too, and there's lots of information about those new admits on the whiteboard. There's a note from a family member, don't shower my mom today. It's all on the whiteboard. And then I asked the ED, why are you doing this on the whiteboard? You have a computer here and you're paying for this legacy EHR. Where's the disconnect? Why are you running this on the whiteboard? When the family calls, you have no evidence now that you didn't give the mom a shower, you did give the mom a shower, whatever. And she said, I often have this one caregiver and she switches her shifts. And when that happens, I have no idea how to fix that in the system. And so the whiteboard, I know how to do it. And both of these, kind of the story of the move-in paperwork and the story of the whiteboard, are really kind of the key problem we solve in senior living. When the staff doesn't have good tools to run their community, they resort to these workarounds that are frustrating for the family, they're frustrating for the staff, they result in staffing efficiency. There's a compliance risk now because you have no evidence that you gave or didn't give the shower. There's a care revenue risk because now maybe you're giving more showers than the system thinks. So there's so many downstream effects when you don't have the systems in place to actually run your community like you should be running it. So that's my long-winded answer.
Yeah, and I'm just going to add one more thing after listening to y'all, because I think for all of us, a key differentiator is that we are all really focused specifically on seniors who live in senior housing. And so we're not trying to take things that we've developed for other populations or for other places of care and kind of make them fit, or make some changes and tweaks over here, and this is going to work for you. But really working closely with operators and with our partners to say, what do you really need? What do your residents really need? And then how can we each in our own way help you meet that need?
That's a really good point.
It's really well put. So So now maybe flipping the coin of, I think because we all are deeply focused on senior housing, we both love this industry and hate this industry, right? Because there's some really mismatched incentives in the industry, and that create real friction for operators that might really want a solution, but they don't necessarily know, how do I adopt it? How do I do change management? How do I pay for it? And so maybe now flipping the coin of, none of you would be here if you didn't have phenomenal solutions, but there's some real barriers and points of friction. What are the challenges that you run into when you're approaching folks to use your solution? I'm going to flip it now and let us start on the other side. Go ahead.
I was telling this to Andy, who I met a few minutes ago when we were having lunch. When we meet a new customer, we tell the story of the company, and I tell that story about the move-in and the shower schedule on the whiteboard, and then we go to a demo. And so I sit down, we show this product, and we show how, hey, the family has this family portal. I know Manisha was talking a lot about family transparency. We actually have built a family portal from an EHR in senior living, which is a product that doesn't exist really in the market today. And we show the move-in documents and e-signature, and we show this compliance dashboard and this data analytics, and we show all these amazing features and how it's easy for the staff to use. That whole demo takes about 15 or 20 minutes, and we have them nodding in 5 minutes. That part is actually the easy part, is convincing them, wow, we've built a better solution here for senior living. The product is good, the design is good, our team comes from Apple. That's the easy part. The next, the rest of the meeting, the actual hard part is then talking to them about, hey, it's okay for you to think about switching out your legacy system that took you 3 years to deploy, and you're now taking over these 4 buildings, and you're selling these 4 buildings, and you have a lawsuit in this building. So it's really about convincing them, hey, we got this, we can help you do this. When you deployed your legacy solution, it took you 3 years, you're still not deployed, and you have one building that's still using, the 1.0 version of the system because they're just too antiquated to download the update. So that's the problem we're facing. It's not the product anymore. We've built an amazing product. It's really hand-holding them along the way. And to that point, we've really spent a lot of time on our implementation and success team. So we had to learn this. So when we started, we'd give them the software, we give them a demo, and then we say, okay, go install this at all your buildings. Now we're on site, we're doing all the trainings, I'm showing up on site, my team is at every single launch, we do all the data entry, we now do all the scanning. So whether or not you think you have stuff on paper, you do have a lot of stuff on paper. We scan every piece of paper, we digitize all the data off that piece of paper. So we're taking on a heavy part of the lift. And it's win-win because I get a community that's happier, that's now using my tool, and from our side, we're getting paid faster. And so there's a real win to doing that. And so that is the real barrier that we see, is really this change management. Hey, I can adopt this software, and it's not going to be this 2-year process.
For us, I think healthcare is really complicated, right? And so bringing these older adults into your communities, and as great as we are at what we individually do, you can't have one silver bullet that fixes all the healthcare needs of an older adult moving into a senior living setting. And so Chris referenced it earlier. We are part of the Servium Care Network, and building that from a strategic perspective is that we are a valuable cog in the wheel, but you have to have every cog filled to have the wheel roll fluidly and smoothly. And so in the role of an executive director or executive leadership at a local community level, they're often firefighters, right? Continually running around putting out fires. And in the near term, when we roll out our services and they're new, it's a little more work in the beginning. It's harder. And so when you downstream, it gets easier and we actually make their life better, but it's getting over that first hump of, I don't have time to roll this new thing out now to get to 3 months from now when you make my life easier. And it presents as a real and valid obstacle. And if we can present a playbook that offers the turnkey solution, that you get everything out of the way in that first 3-month period, that gives the total healthcare solution to an operator, I think it's going to change the game for implementation on the healthcare side in particular.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I think focus time, and attention are often the first three things that we all kind of struggle with sometimes at an operator level, but also at the individual community level. And we all understand that there's a lot of things competing today as a priority. But, to the point, once you get somebody to raise their hand and say, yes, I really am interested in this, I think it is that, how do you get over the first initial implementation? How do you get in and make it work well? And, when I first started doing this about 10 years ago, working with SNF operators and trying to convince them that they should become a Medicare Advantage plan where they actually owned the plan, or at least a big chunk of it, I learned three really, really important things. The first one is that you have to make sure there's a real need. And that's both ways. All of these things are not just not just things that we need operators to do. It's things that we have learned we have to help operators understand. So what is the real specific need? The first thing that you are going to solve. So when someone says, well, why are you talking to Curana? Why are you talking to Fox? They say, this is why. The second big thing is and several people have said this in discussions, you have to have real data. So going into this, great, if you're going to do a pilot program, you're going to say we're going to do proof of concept over here. You need a plan for how are you going to get data that supports that real need, where you can say, did this help meet our need or not, and move on from there. And then the last thing is that real change requires real change. So you have to have a plan every single day when you're implementing. And again, this is for us as well as for operators. Every single day you got to get up. You need a champion who's going to be the one to remind people about why you're doing this, what's the need, what the data showed, how this is going to make your life better 3 months later. And then you need to have the rigor as partners to make sure you have those regular touch bases. So every week up front, every month, every quarter with your executive steering company or steering committee. And those things sound real nice and easy, but if you don't have a playbook, you don't have a team who's saying, how do we make this easier to do, and you're not willing as a partner, it's just not going to work. So I think the partnership is extremely important because you need to choose the right partner in these big strategies. You need someone to help you do it.
Yeah, I think this is a sign that we have really good entrepreneurs here, that there's a level of ownership that these folks take around. It's not just about delivering a great product or things like that. It's about understanding the barriers to adoption, and it's our job to be flexible. Like, it's our job to understand the change management, productize that go-live process, and reduce those barriers to adoption. So I really appreciate the level of ownership, whether it's around having a real level of empathy for, I think, anybody that's switched from like Apple to Android or anything like that. Like, it is a pain. It's a pain in the butt, and you kind of forget about it when you've used it for a while. But kind of deeply knowing that, especially for an industry that we talked about it a little this morning, you don't get to close. Your building is open 24/7, and anything can happen any day of the week. You and your team are fighting a lot of fires all the time. And so it's really hard to kind of make that time to think about what's next and invest in the future, especially when you can find out that you spent 3 years rolling out this program and now that company went out of business or whatever. And so there's risk involved. And so it's really on us to own that and make it easier and easier and de-risk and all of that. But maybe as we've had a lot of time getting to know this industry and working with folks in the industry, what are the things that you do wish you existed in the industry? So as one example, it's striking to me that I can only think of a handful of like really good CTOs in the industry. I see a lot of like VPs of IT as an example that are kind of responsible for managing networks and things like that. But you don't see a lot of folks who are really good at like looking in the business, seeing where the problems are, and doing the kinds of things you described. that like I'm look at this workflow, there's ways to make this better, there's stuff we can build, there's stuff we should go out and buy. And we do see, folks that might be trying to do that, be a VP strategy, but it's easy for them to get disconnected from the business. And so I think it's a really hard role for this industry to hire because it's kind of a first of its type. And then once you have that person, they can hire people. And so as an example, there's a group in Florida that, this guy set a goal of saving $1 million in HVAC expenses, energy savings in Florida. And it's like, he set that as a goal and he knows he's gonna blow it out of the water because like, it actually feels really easy to him of like, I can set up systems to know how often rooms are being used and we don't need to be cooling every room all the time and things like that. So there's all these problems that like, we're seeing from the outside and we have specific solutions to solve specific problems, but there's also a lot that can be solved from the inside, but it's hard. It's hard to do, it's hard to invest in. So maybe I'd love to and maybe I'll start with you again, what are some of the things that you'd love to see from kind of within the industry that you think would help move the industry forward?
I think that we've talked a lot, the last panel talked about AI and, what that was going to do. And, all the VCs said, hey, we're underestimating the impact this is going to have on the world. And I have a little bit of a contrarian view, especially when it comes to senior living. And the reason I don't think AI is going to have a small impact on the world at large. I think senior living will get there, but the data is still so siloed, I think, to your point earlier. And the data is stuck in various legacy systems that I think it's not going to be that we're going to have some, ChatGPT that's going to connect your systems and you're going to start asking it questions. That's not how you're going to go and improve your NOI next week. There are stepping stones to getting there, and I think that kind of unlocking your data is the first. So where I think the industry would really benefit, and I think the innovative communities that we work with are starting to do, is really focus on having whether their title is data scientist or not, someone who's acting like a data scientist would in any other organization, which is basically able to pull their data from their CRM, pull their data from their EHR, pull their data from their financials, and look at it in one holistic view, and able to answer questions. And we're starting to do some of this in our end, kind of in the EHR data that we have access to, and we're finding this is where this is my contrarian view on the AI point. The most basic things. I'm just like, how many people have falls and their assessments are overdue? It's not AI. It's a SQL query. It's not even a SQL query. I sort the table by falls, and then I sort the table by days since last assessment, and then I copy and paste the top 5 rows, and I email it to the VP of Ops, and she's like, I won't say what she said, and she sent it immediately to the head of risk, and she's like, look, did you know this? And then the chief legal officer is going crazy, trying to do something. And so we don't need AI yet. We are still at we're in the caveman era of our data story. And so I think just getting fluency with that is where the industry would start to benefit. And then we will get to AI.
I think a movement towards, we've heard and we've referenced value-based care, right? But a real true motivation in the industry to make value-based care real. Whereas today, I think when you look at sort of how senior living works and operates, there's not a true, tangible financial motivator to want to have senior living jump into value-based care. It's for lack of a better description, a landlord-tenant relationship where you're not, other than just wanting to do the right thing, which is why every person in this room got in this business, there's not a financial motivator to want to get your residents well. There just isn't. And that's not the fault of the operator. It's just a broken system that needs fixing, and value-based care can fix it. And so I think what the industry needs is like real, tangible evidence that it's not just a theory, but something we can actually do something with, make people better, and not be ashamed to make a decent living doing it. And I think that's okay. It's just not here yet. But we're working on it.
That's right. We're working on it. And I wouldn't say it's just value-based care. I think there is still kind of 2 camps in senior living, right? those who are still stubbornly hospitality-based, and Brian's nodding his head here because we've had this debate for years, right? Is senior living hospitality-focused or care-focused, right? And I'm guessing most people in this room are saying, yeah, it should be both. We got to have both of those things. But I think that goes back to one of my kind of biggest frustrations in working overall in senior living is that, again, there is so much opportunity. You know where every one of your residents live, right? We can deliver care and services directly to them. When you think about an efficient, effective care delivery model that truly changes the way seniors live and how they live longer in your communities, you've got the perfect setup. But to Jason's point, got to find ways to make that care benefit your capital. You know, you've got to have a bottom line and return on investment in those things. So that's where I'm excited about some of the technology. I've seen a sea change, really, I think. I was in a session yesterday, and I asked AL memory care providers, how many of you consider yourself to be a healthcare provider? And I actually got 5 hands. And that was a big deal because I think probably 6 years ago, it would have been 0, hands that went up there. So I think deciding what we need to be and why is really important. And then, again, making sure that with that confident value statement, mission statement, aggressively marketing what you bring to the table. And then, again, as the industry, I think we need to make sure that we're supporting that through funding some of these innovations, through different partnerships that we can bring to the table. And I'm really excited also about hearing operators talk about, how do we redesign senior living overall? And I think we're to the point in the evolution, I guess a little bit of senior living, but also the evolution of the available technology, where we can start to think about doing that.
Yeah, it is probably worth acknowledging, like, we actually have come a long way. Right.
Absolutely.
Especially through a couple of really hard years, there's been some, like, I think a real adoption and a move towards a much more openness and a desire to adopt technology that kind of can move the ball forward. So maybe talking about some of the like innovators in the space, coming more from kind of the vendor side, there's something that I realized recently, which is that there's 2 personality traits of folks that work in senior care that I just connect with so deeply, and I realize that's why I love working in this space. You have to be a good person, first and foremost. Like, you have to want to help people. But as we heard from the VCs earlier, it's not a sexy space. So you also have to be pretty humble. And so it's just really pleasant being around people that have committed to working in senior care, because you have this combination of just like good people that are also just humble and want to help people that are vulnerable and can't necessarily advocate for themselves, and help caregivers that are working really hard, really important work. And so maybe we heard from the VC panel earlier today that, this isn't the sexiest space, and, there hasn't been the unicorn in this space yet, and then people will follow. But I think when we kind of look at some of the other vendors in this space, we see that there's kind of been a lot of junk that's been pitched at this space, and there's not a lot of really good. It's actually hard to find a panel of really good innovators in this space. And so maybe I'd pose that question: is it because there's it's not sexy, and so people aren't necessarily thinking about it? Is it because there's not capital coming out? Is it because there hasn't been that kind of breakout company? Why do you think? Because I do see there's so many challenges in this space. There's so many opportunities to build really meaningful companies. Why don't we see more coming from kind of the vendor side? Anybody want to start on that?
I think in our space, I referenced it earlier, I think ageism's real. And that people didn't focus attention because they thought what we were seeing in older adults and the way that they were functionally failing in our world is they thought it was normal. Like, it's acceptable. Hearing that somebody's grandparents, 107 years old and still functionally thriving, like, that's what I want. I think that's what we all sitting in this room want, because the most valuable commodity we all have is time, right? And so if you can get time, but not only time, but time well spent and well lived, it's extraordinarily valuable. And I think as people in the space looked at it, they just thought, you get old, you functionally fail, and you die. So why invest in innovation if that's really the only path and there's nothing we can do about it? And it's going to take people that really think outside the box and are creative and say, no, that's not how the aging process should be, and we can do it differently. And so, plus, I think the older adults themselves have that ageism self-inflicted upon themselves. Like, I think they also think that that's normal. This is what it is. When I hit 70, it's downhill from here, and it's downhill in a hurry. And what I think we have an opportunity to do with the tsunami that is now here is actually, there are people that are starting to think differently about that. And the older adults themselves are saying, I think I can thrive far into this. And they've got a little extra cash to spend on some things that can assist them in that process, with tech being a really important component of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, short answer, I think it's very hard. I think senior living is, I think as some of the other panelists said, it's hard to sell into senior living. And I think part of that is it's a complicated industry with, there are sort of like, there are developers, there are capital partners, there are operators. We're trying to figure out, who really controls the buying decision. Well, we're selling to the operator, but the capital partner has a big sway, and then that's one dimension. Then you go in and think about medication. We're building a medication stool. We've gone and watched 20 different communities do med passes, and everyone has a bit of a different process. And this is how they deal with the refills, and this is how they do reorders, and this is where they do the psychotropics, and there's a narcotic count form that this community uses, and here they're going to use a photo. And really, so if I came in and was, maybe had less empathy for the market and didn't really work with the market in developing the solution, I would say, oh, well, we'll have this one button and it'll be reorder. We've looked at 20 different ways to reorder and tried to figure out, okay, what is the way that the senior living market wants us to build that solution? I'll give a better example maybe for Safely You. And I hope I don't bungle this, but let's say I have the idea to build fall detection with cameras. I can go and build an AI model and say, okay, we're going to sell these cameras to you. Safely You sells you cameras. They sell you the monitoring. Someone goes and triages the falls and gives you guidance on what happened in the falls. There's a lot more that they've realized that the industry wants. It's not just an idea of, I'll go sell a fall detection system. And so I think that's the difference between kind of the junk companies and the companies that really will sell into senior living, is they're actually thinking a lot about what the buyer really needs. You don't need another widget and another app to download. You need to know how to reduce falls in your buildings, and that is